hold on. This is the big break, right? You just I don't feel like you built it up enough
No, 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 no,
to
no.
discuss
It's
this.
teaser. It's teaser.
That wasn't a teaser though.
Give me a
That
taste.
was
Give me a
like
taste.
you didn't fill
Give
it
me a
up.
taste.
You should,
You.
guys, we got
Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to the RailCats Talk podcast. He's Chuck Polarek. I'm Kyle Svetich. Yeah, Chuck. Cleveland series not going so hot, is it?
no, it's been rough. Uh Glimmers of hope and then dashed at the last minute. It's like a bad movie.
Yeah. Yeah, a really, really rough movie. But I think the biggest thing to take away from this aspect of it is that Cleveland is just that good.
Absolutely. There's not a single weakness in that lineup, and you kind of wonder how can Cleveland put together a team like this? I think their weakness is their bullpen, but um, they haven't used it very much.
No.
So how do you attack a Cleveland? There's a reason why they're in first place.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting. I think me and you both said that we think that Cleveland's gonna take it overall, the Miles World Cup champions, but I think Winnipeg is gonna put their hat in the rink on this one with their pitching. So if those two end up being the two that go into it, I think in the past, I know Chicago and Kansas City was a good one, but I really think those two are such counterbalances of each other that it makes for a really good it's going to make for a good matchup in the end if it does happen. Obviously,
Well,
there's a
I'm
lot of things that
I'm
can happen.
hoping that it does happen because I really want Logan Watkins to have his say in this.
Yeah.
Well, that's the hidden message behind it all is that if you get Winnipeg against Cleburne, the manager that was with Cleburne last year that got let go, and he winds up finding his way to Winnipeg when they let go of Taggart.
Hmm.
So this could be his way of kind of just digging in the heels a little bit, and spurring somebody. So that's that to me that would be very interesting. But getting to the Railcats, a couple of changes that we've noticed. So we've definitely kind of youngened,
Yeah.
aged down the roster quite a bit. Valera gone.
Yeah.
Um,
The Valera's gone. I think we talked about that last week. I think
yeah,
the biggest news right now is that Francisco Del was released from the team
yep,
uh, as basically a split time situation that it was time for it to kind of roll itself out. The team's not doing successful, and you play half the season, you miss half the season, and then you come into the new, you come into the year, and then it's not the product in the field, it's not the way you want it to be. You start splitting some time with people, with newer players, and it just kind of ravels itself into that situation. It's understandable. Not like he was having the best of years. He had a small glimpse of opportunity where it seemed like he was going to turn things around with his power, with his numbers. It just never really kind of came to fruition.
yeah. I mean, that's why I think that the focus now for the rest of the season is get these new guys some at bats, get these young guys some experience, and see what you can hold on to for next year.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Lamar is kind of looking at. I from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think the ultimate thing that I believe we're getting ourselves into is we on the podcast we talk that 90% of the fan base goes for the game experience and not so much the product on the field. The 10% of the fan base is that 10% that really listens to the podcast, that gets into the numbers, that cares about the product on the field. With that 10%, it's seeming like that is becoming a fracture in the fan base as far as that 10% not satisfied with the product on the field, which I completely understand. You're a losing
Absolutely.
team. You've been losing team for 5 years now. And things aren't getting better. Me and you have been advocates for Lamar. We think that he should be the manager. We understand the frustration of other fans, and we can't we can't change people's minds and how they feel. That's just not going to happen. But let's go ahead and maybe cater to it a little bit to because I don't think it's not onto our thoughts. It's been on my mind in the back burner of if Lamar's here for the 2025 season, when do we start placing him on that hot seat?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one. Uh, here's a couple of things you need to take into consideration. One, coming into independent baseball, there's a reason why three managers switched places last year or for this year, right? And they didn't bring in new managers because you need to have the connections, you need to have the understanding of the system and all of that. And the RailCats really took a chance. Taggart left and he left independent baseball for that period of time. So you had this void where it was, hey, we need to find somebody, right? And Lamarr fit that build, fit the bill on what we were looking for. Um, Taggart comes back and they start rotating and what have you. But finding a manager for independent baseball is not that easy.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that we need to look at that. Okay. Um, Lamar is building a system here. And yes, it absolutely sucks that we lose. I'll tell you what, I hate being at the end of the dugout when people are telling me that my team sucks. The opposing team is laughing at me because I am rooting for a team that isn't doing what they should be doing, right? That sucks. I can absolutely feel the same feelings that these guys have that are gamers that want to just have their team win. Understood, right? Um, so looking at this season, looking at the end of the season, we've got a handful of games left. Even if we won every single game, it would still be a non-successful season, an unsuccessful season, right? So for the rest of the season, really just seeing how these players fit in to me, that's the right answer. That's why I'm saying I think this is what Lamar's doing because to me, this is
Hmm.
what he sets. So next year, he comes in. Do I think that he needs to change some things around? Absolutely. Do I think that he needs to add maybe somebody uh, to the coaching staff? That maybe has some connections to players or what have you, whether it's a former player or somebody that is um, a player coach, kind of bring them into the helm like Jabari, right? Jabari's a player coach essentially. Um, do we need to do something like that? Maybe, right? That would be a little different, but putting Lamar on the hot seat, you're not throwing good money after bad here, which is,
Hmm.
I think, the sense that people have, right? He's no good because we're losing, so let's get rid of him. Let's bring somebody else in. Guess what? You bring somebody else in that doesn't have the independent baseball manager experience, you're going to be going through another 2, 3, 4 years of this.
I mean, to put it in perspective with the Greg Taggart, the Pete Incaviglia, and the Logan Watkins situation, is all three of them had independent jobs that, realistically, it was Taggart that got released, and then it was Watkins, and then Pete basically left where he came from, I think in the Frontier League. I can't, or he went from
Valley
the
Cats.
Valley Cats, and he takes that spot in Cleburne, and Logan takes the spot in Winnipeg, and Greg takes the spot in Tri-City, which
Right.
to their extent, Greg has done a phenomenal job kind of changing the culture. He did like a whole roster reconstruction over with Tri-City. He's made them competitive. But with that comment, I know people are going to say, well, why don't we just bring him back? Here's my counterpoint to that. The Frontier League is not the American Association. The
No.
American Association is completely different than what it was when Greg was there. The Frontier League is what Greg is used to.
Yeah.
So you can't use that as an example. I'm just saying with those three managers, they all rotated a spot.
Yeah.
When Greg left from Gary, there was no spot to rotate.
Exactly.
So you couldn't bring someone else because there was just going to be an open gap. And not saying that maybe being the manager of the, Gary South Shore RailCats is the easiest feat in the world because the recruiting may not be there. You're in Gary. There's that bad notion. We talk about recruiting because it's so important to this aspect. It's not a professional league baseball team where they can go out and trade for whoever they want, whatever prospects they want to do it. You don't have that. It's almost like recruiting for college football
Yeah.
or college in general. I'm trying to get this player in, but he'd rather go play at Alabama. Like it's just you have that kind of you have to build a system on top of it. But upon building that system, I think we've both seen a shift in culture as far as international players, Venezuelan players trying to pick that demographic, it seems up in that situation. To me, I think that's the biggest fault that we may see with the roster because you look at other independent baseball leagues and they don't are other teams in the American Association, they don't have that high number of international players that have a lot of visas. So does that lead the question into bringing in players with visas, bringing the longer leashes because you spend $1,000 on a player to get their visa? That's $1,000 that you can't spend flipping that roster spot over. So it's one of you're taking someone out of their home country, bringing them in to give them an opportunity, and you're kind of stuck with them almost. I'm not saying that you have to, but I think the leash is a little bit longer because you went out and spent extra on them.
Yeah. I can see some of that. Obviously you don't want anytime you bring in somebody and you're paying some extra money for them, you don't want to have that egg on your face. It doesn't work out. We had that issue last year, right? When we had can't remember the guy's name that played first base, but we had
Tapia, Emmanuel
Tapia.
Tapia.
Tapia was a high paid guy. Comes in, didn't produce, kept him for 30 games, let him go. So uh, yeah, money could come into it. Um, fact that you want somebody to succeed, not just for them to succeed, but also so that you don't have to have another one of those didn't succeed check marks next to your name, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I can see that. But look at the guys we just brought in. We just brought in four guys that are American players.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a mix. We just brought in Ethan too, which is an American player. So that's
Hmm.
really it's five that I see. And you know, it's hard. It's hard. I don't want to be in the shoes. I would love to play Monday morning quarterback or the Monday afternoon baseball manager, whatever you want to call it. I don't envy being in the shoes of a manager like Lamarr, where
Hmm.
you've got to try to find players that want to play independent baseball. Uh, that being said, hey, it's we this year we've seen a lot of sparks. You know,
Like I said, we've discussed it many times. There's even commentators outside the realm of a handful of people that look at this roster. I mean, I think it was Tuesday. Brad Allred was with Andrew Mile because the stream issue was an issue in a half of itself. But he, at the end of the game, he jumped on with Andrew, and they were doing play-by-play together and talking. And Brad said, "You look at this roster, and they should be producing at a high level, but they're simply not. So there is a point that you blame the manager for the fault of the team, but sometimes you have to look at the players themselves and saying, you're not producing at the level you should have been. Uh, We're going to call it for what it is. Francisco Del really hasn't been producing. I hate to say it, but LG Castillo and Gio Diaz aren't producing at the level they should have been. Or, the numbers aren't quite there. Now you can look at the baby, little things that we see here and there, but the numbers just don't show it. Guillermo Quintana was supposed to be someone that came in and hit the ball or the cover off the ball, and it just simply hasn't. Rincon was injured, I know, That's one of those situations that it didn't help out. Miguel Sierra had a rough first patch of the season. Olivier Brasabe has cooled off. There's players that I just that haven't produced the level that they should have been.
That's just the hitting. Look at
That's
the pitch.
yeah, just the hitting. You look at the pitching side of things. Franklin Perez, number almost a top three prospect, hasn't come out to what it needed to be. Carlos Sanabria has found himself in the bullpen. Starting really wasn't his best key that it should have been. You overutilized some of your bullpen pieces, and now it's starting to falter towards the end because the offensive side wasn't being productive. The starting pitching necessarily, there's just so much to the roster that hasn't produced the level that they should have, that was expected of them. So I think maybe that expectation that Lamarr had for them, he wanted to see that through and make things work for certain players because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of these players that are on this roster that have in injury prior histories. Even Ethan Hankins right now, he's coming off an injury. Abatini's coming off an injury. I know he's the newer players, but Franklin Perez coming off an injury. Uh, Chris Irwin's still battling an injury. Like there's still a lot of injury ridden on this team. Miguel Sierra was hurt. You have Carlos Rincon was hurt. There's a lot that goes into it, and you can't have this next man up mentality because there is no next man up. You can't just start bringing a bunch of people on because you can't do that. You can't bring
Right,
someone up from an affiliate ball because you don't have that option. And I think
right.
that's something that we get blinded by because we compare this ourselves, how a team should be ran to what teams in the major league organizations are doing. You
Yeah,
can't do that.
no, no.
And I think that's just something that Lamarr also has to battle because he's not used to that. He's used to a guy going down and the front office of the Houston Astros organization is like, okay, we'll get it fixed. Don't worry. We'll bring someone up or we'll send
Here's your
someone
new
down.
guy. Here's your
Here's
new
your new
guy.
guy. You don't have to worry about it. There's a learning curve with being an independent baseball manager as well. I'm not saying that we just say, you know what, you're right. We will wash the sins away of this year and not put some of the blame on Lamarr. I don't think we're doing that. I'm just saying we can't call for someone's head because of one, you may not like him because he replaced Greg Taggart. Two, he may have released players or got rid of players that you really enjoyed watching. I think maybe that's a bigger reason behind it than what it needs to be.
That's I
But
think that's a huge part behind it.
but at that point, if we're gonna run through the list, even just the past 3 years, all right. Uh, Prime example, Tom Walraven. I know he's still playing baseball, but he didn't want to come back because he has his teaching degree. He wants to teach. He's providing his career. He wants to move on and do something else. Michael Woodworth was not happy with basically Gio Diaz coming in and almost basically taking his spot. If that's what he was unhappy with that situation. Uh, Lingua and Sheeks. I know he was shopping Lingua and he kind of gave Sheeks up, but those players wanted to win and they weren't winning. So he was looking for the best of those players. So yeah, it hurts seeing those players get released or but
So
that
let me throw something else in there. Woody had said this was his last season. So why not trade him off to a team that's in the playoffs for that last season
Mhm,
and do him a favor, right? Sheets was given the opportunity. He was asked, "Hey, these people want you. Do you want to go play for them?" She said, "No, I'm going to finish out with this team." So he wanted to stay with the RailCats, and then after the RailCats were eliminated, he said, "Okay, go ahead and trade me. I want to play for a championship."
mhm.
So, so if you look at kind of the best interest of the players, Lamar seems to show that he has it.
Yeah, you
You
ask
know,
you
and
ask
that's
you ask any of them, even the
right,
player interviews that we've just got done, over a handful of them, they respect Lamar for being a player's coach.
right.
But at some point, you have to break that off, though. And I think he's just not at that point yet. It's a learning curve. And we are at that point to where we go into next year. And I said, I think looking on into next year, we don't put him on the hot seat right now. We see what he does in the offseason. If he brings back the same roster he does this year, or close to the same roster this year to next year, okay, I'm gonna turn the temperature on because
Yeah,
obviously it hasn't produced the way it needed to be. But if we have
you
a
have you have to have some ringers. You have to have something that comes in that makes you say, okay, this is big. Just like the last year or this year, bringing in Franklin Perez, bringing in Sanabria. Before the season started, you brought them in, and you're like, okay,
yep.
all right, I see your game here, right? I see what you're doing here. And guess what? Didn't pan out,
Hmm.
right? I mean, you could bring in, uh, I don't know, one of the uh, Aaron Judge, right? And bring him in, be like, or let's say a Sermo,
Hmm.
right? Let's do something more realistic to us. Bring in a Sermo, and we're like, wow, this is going to be fantastic. And then Sermo just doesn't do it, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, this must be a Lamar problem. That's not,
I
so at the end of the season, beginning of next season, we need to look at the transaction, see what takes place, see if stuff's making sense. See if these relationships that Lamar is building, if they come or start to come to fruition and go from that. We can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, hey, we're having a losing season, so let's get rid of it all and start from scratch. Because I am not willing to go another 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons with a losing team.
no,
I'm not willing
I don't
as a
I
fan.
don't I don't think we are. You're right. The comment of being made, "Are you sick and tired of losing?" Yeah, I know I am. I mean, I'm covering the team. I'm helping the team out and being in depth with everything. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks when you're wearing RailCat stuff all the time, going into work and be like, "Hey, how's the team?" They suck.
Yep.
It's annoying. And you every right is it's frustration. I
Oh,
get
and
it.
and think about it. Having to cover, think of Andrew Miles' job,
Yeah.
right? Having to go through this over and over and over again. It still puts on the professional thing and does his best, right? But to think that anybody on that team is happy with where they're at right now, you're in a different world,
No,
right? To
you're
think that Lamar is satisfied with the progress that they made, you'd be in a different world. We're
I,
all in the same boat here.
I and there the issue is that I think we didn't see a lot of overturn because we had a really good month in June. Like we thought we were gonna flip the script on the situation, and then July hit, and I just don't think there was anything that was going to fix the situation. I think we were just so far not saying that you were out of the playoff race, but you were so far past the point of trying to overturn the roster that you weren't going to get the pieces that you needed back. I just don't think that was going to be okay. You see the other transactions that go on. There's not a whole like flip of the roster. It's little pieces here and there and pulling team, if a guy, it's just those kind of things that just little bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's what what do you do? What
Where
do you do?
I understand the frustration of the fan base that the percentage of the people that really care about the product on the field. There's been plenty of times where I'm like, do I really want to post something today, or do I really have the motivation to get a podcast going today? No, there has because it just hasn't been successful. But things also take time, and I know we're in a day and age where we need
Instant
success
gratification.
up front.
Yeah, instant gratification, right? I want my team to win. I want them to win by a bunch. It's needs to happen now. Uh, I like I said, I'd wait till summer, see or winter time. Let's see what kind of big changes come in. Definitely need to see some kind of a pop that hits. Um, and uh, going back to, I get it. I have conversations with these people that are big fans or, invested, I would say monetarily, physically, mentally, emotionally, the whole thing in this team, and their favorite player gets traded or one of the players that is staying with them gets traded or whatever, and you're like, what the heck, right?
Yeah.
Um, I hate Lamar because of it, and that's not. It's understandable to feel that way, but it's not. You really have to take that step back and realize that this isn't. It's not. That's not the problem, right? I had the. I'll say this. I had the day that Jackson got released. I was extremely uh, disappointed, and so much so that I went to Lamar and I said, "Lamar, you just traded one. You just released one of my favorite players." And he's like, "Chuck, you got to look at the big picture, man. I don't want to keep losing, and we have to look at the big picture here. It's a change that had to happen for the better of the team."
Mhm.
Okay, you know, and hey, I get it. I understand. It's not fair. You know, um, I've questioned a lot of the moves. Getting rid of Alico, and we talked about that last week,
Yep.
right? Something like that, where it's like, okay, why? But hey, okay, it's it's our team. It's not like we can all of a sudden become, I don't know, Sioux Fall Canaries fans.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that people just believe that they can just turn the roster over at a will of a snap of the fingers, and you just can't do that. But you're playing with people's livelihoods at one point. This isn't video games, this isn't MLB The Show, this isn't this isn't Madden. You also have to put the human element into the situation.
Right.
Granted, you also have to take the human element out of the situation. You have to balance both. And that's something that I think the as an organization that they need to have that balance of potentially bringing in a baseball operations role. That's
Well,
something,
so we've talked about that before. But here's what I want to say about the current situation. You really need to ask yourself, is this the guy, Lamar? Is this the guy that you want to move forward with? Not because of the success on the field, but in having a conversation with somebody, and that we have the players with the best character
mhm,
in the league. He's recruiting guys that represent the community very well. Um, we don't have players on the team that other teams absolutely hate or that are absolutely awful human beings like some of these other teams have, right? And we don't have that. So is he giving up a little bit of success to make sure that he's recruiting the right players? Absolutely,
mhm.
right? And so you have to ask yourself, is this the type of guy that we want to have moving forward? And I can tell you from the way that he interacts with the fans, with the way that he interacts with the players, with the type of players that he's bringing in, from a character perspective, absolutely. I want to
Yeah.
give him a longer leash because of that.
No, I do. And I feel a little bit that some of the fan base doesn't want to make that connection because it's easier to hate on a guy than it is to get to know him and get to know the kind of person that he is and bring in those players.
Right.
It's easy to look from the outside and going, yeah, sorry, you're not cutting it out. I don't like you. You released a bunch of players I liked. You're not doing successful. I'm not going to give you a chance. I don't care what kind of players you're bringing in. The team on the field isn't producing. I don't care. It is what it is. And you have every right to do that. I'm just
Absolutely.
saying that if you're listening to this podcast, you want more inside depth information of what's going on with the RailCats and what goes on in the league in general, this is what we're trying to tell you. Leaking a little bit when you listen on Tuesday, and I have Mr. Joe Ang on the podcast, and he talks about this. He
Okay, now
talks,
hold on. this is the big break, right? I don't feel like you built it up enough
No, 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 no,
to
no.
discuss
It's
this.
teaser. It's teaser.
That wasn't a teaser though.
give him a
That
taste.
was
Give him a
like
taste.
you didn't
Give,
fill
give
it
him a
up.
taste.
You should,
Give,
guys, we got Joe. We got Joe, the
ah,
owner of the RailCats on the podcast, guys. So that's what he just ruined right there with his little teaser of just sliding it in. We have
just
Joe.
little, just little, just little. I, when I get in the heat of the conversation, I don't. I'm not a big build-up person, as we all can tell. I'm just
Right.
saying there is a point in time where we have to take a step back and we have to understand the situation that not everything. It's everything. We can't compare everything to an MLB organization because it's not. I think that's in our heads, that's still instilled into our heads that, hey, this should be an MLB organization. We should run it like an MLB organization because it's a professional team. You're right, it's a professional team, but they don't have the funds, they don't have the money, they don't have the resources. So sometimes you have to take a step back and you have to realize that not everything is rainbows and sunshines, and there's other priorities that take place.
Absolutely.
But with that
That being
being,
Hold on. That being said, I think that we need to discuss uh, the dilemma that we run into as fans and putting bags on our head. And the reason why I want to discuss that is because it did become an issue and it did become one of those things where it's back and forth. Listen, guys, I get it. Everybody gets it that we're not winning. And sometimes we can just say, you know what? I want to be affiliated, but I don't want to be affiliated with this team, right? I get that. Every right that you have as a fan to do that kind of craziness or to express yourself or your displeasure with the team in that way. Absolutely, you're right to do that. And I appreciate that you care enough about the team or about this sport or about the Railcats in general that you want to express your displeasure in it and in the current situation that we're in. I get it, right? But we also have to take that and we have to look at it from another perspective too. And that's exactly what you're talking about is that there's more to it. There's, you know, you're dealing with people's livelihoods. You're dealing with these guys aren't taking it off. They're still out there playing hard even though they're losing. They're still pissed off when they're not successful. They're still in there just giving everything that they have. They're not, hey, we're losing, so I'm only going to work out 1 hour before the game today. No, they're not doing that. They're still putting in every bit as much effort as they are if they were winning, if they were going for it all. So to me, when you do something like that, you're kind of disrespecting that aspect of it. I get it that and I appreciate that you have every bit of being disappointed and wanting to have your thoughts known in this whole situation. Um, but when you look at the big picture, is that necessarily the way to do it? That's my take on that.
I, I think there are some people that I've discussed my portion of it. I guess the frustrating part that came from with me, as again I said, as what I do, I don't have a right to tell a fan what they can and cannot do as a fan. But knowing the front office people, knowing the hours that they put into trying to make the fan experience the best they possibly can, because realistically, like we said, 90% of the people that come here don't care about the product on the field. It's plain and simple. Everyone understands that. But showing that kind of displeasure, I would be heartbroken as a front office member because I have put so much work into making the stadium experience better
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that now we're still doing our best, giving you what we can do, but you're just not happy with the current situation. Granted, you have every right to be, but I feel like it's a stab in the back to the front office that do put
Yeah,
that.
it's just it's I could see it as being disheartening. You got to remember, I mean, what these guys are putting in place, just not on the field. I'm just talking about the experience is better than what you're going to get in an MLB game.
Hmm.
And it's a significantly lower percentage of what the cost is, right? So for going to a RailCats game and it costs you $10, it's costing you $6 for a hot dog. Um, that same hot dog's costing you $9 at a baseball game, and that ticket's costing you $45, right? So uh, you don't have the hassle of the drive to Chicago. You don't have, there's so much more that comes into play that you need to realize that these guys are putting in so much time. They're not getting rich off of this, right? They're doing it because of their love or their passion for what they do and trying to do their best to help the fans appreciate or help the fans have that experience. And yeah, I could see that something like that would be, it is kind of a kick in the teeth a little bit to them. But that being said, you know, we should be mindful of the things that we say and mindful of the things that we do because they do affect people that we don't necessarily realize that it's going to affect. And you have every right, right, to do things. But I would hope that we would take those things into consideration before we do them. You know, that's just my view. I agree with you.
I just I don't. Not everything is always going to be about the product on the field.
No, no, it's not. It's not. And that's one of the things we talk about on the podcast, right? Is we talk about all of these. I mean, every guy we interview, it's how much time preparation time does it take for you to get
Hmm.
to go out there and throw, you know, 6 pitches to get a guy out, and you're done for the day, right? It's every day these guys are up there early, working out, getting ready, studying, whatever it is, honing their craft to get better for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is. This season's basically dumpster fire in general, and I mean, it is what it is. What you're gonna do. Just looking at, this is recorded on Saturday before the fifth game against Cleburne. This will probably come out on Sunday. So the Cleburne game will probably be over on Sunday anyways, but you're looking at the future schedule. Go to Lake Country for 4 games and then Milwaukee for 3 games before they hit the road on Monday to go back to Winnipeg. So that's what you're looking for in the next little bit, as far as that. And I know I terribly built up the Joe Eng interview,
Let's
but
let's talk about this for a second. So we have the opportunity to get Joe on, and let me tell you, Joe is by far one of the nicest guys that you'll come across. Genuinely cares about um, baseball and genuinely cares about how our experience goes at the stadium.
mhm,
And this was before the interview. This was something that I just, me and Natasha go and we meet him and shake his hand and talk to him, and he just wants to ask all the questions, wants to know how you feel about this, what do you think of that, and all of this stuff. Genuinely nice guy. Great to have him as an owner of the RailCats. Uh, just really can't say enough about him. And the fact that he took, some busy time that he had and got on and talked with us,
mhm.
nobody's right, about Railcast baseball was fantastic.
Yeah.
I I thought beautiful, beautiful job and fantastic. It was just great.
Yeah, he also gets it too. We did talk about the elephant in the room, uh, about the team on the field. We did talk about he is open to anything and everything. He is a great leader. It shows in his front office. I said after the interview, I said I would run through a brick wall for the man.
Yep.
That's just how he is. I think he has an idea for the Railcats. He has an idea for the connection between him and the city of Gary, and not even just the city of Gary in general. It's every Northwest Indiana city that we have. Hammond, Highland, Maryville, Crown Point, Valpo, all of that. I think there's that connection that he wants to make with everyone. It's just not about Gary, it's about the region in general.
Yeah, and the fact that he points out that it's outside of the confines of the steel yard.
Hmm.
That Rusty, far well known than any player, than him, right? Goes to all of these different places to interact with kids and gets them to love the sport of baseball. Uh, you know, he he gets it, and I think that's why we talked about Lamarr. He gets it.
Hmm.
You know, we're going to win some games, we're going to lose some games, but really it's the impact that we're leaving behind, and it's the impact of what the experience is. Uh, it's fantastic to
Yep.
have Joe as an owner of the company.
Yep. And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
As I gotta get ready to go to work here shortly. So
Oh, go sell some shoes, man.
yeah, I'll go sell some shoes. Check, you got anything before
Oh, wait
final
a second.
thoughts?
Move product. Is that how you move freight? Is that what?
Yeah, freight. I move freight. Yeah.
Okay. No. Hey guys, we got two games left in this series. Let's try to win some games. And hey, let's play some baseball.
All right. Couldn't say it better myself. For Chuck, I'm Kyle. This is RailCats Talk Podcast. Be sure to follow all on social media, all that fun jazz, just under RailCats Talk, or especially the website. Start subscribing to that, so when I start putting up articles, you can see those as well. But that will wrap it up. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening, whenever you're watching this, and go Cats.
Okay.
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike three. Wrap this one up in green and white.